Welcome to the Manhattan Project. This is day 20.
How are we going to do that tomorrow, Evan?
With my dick.
Today, Evan and I sat down for the new Netflix original film Death Note, directed by one of our favorite directors, Adam Wingard. There's no vlog footage of it, but if you want to see what it looked like, kind of like this.
So Death Note is an adaptation of a famous manga series, this time for American audiences. I think it's been adapted before. It's about a kid named Light who finds this mysterious book where whoever's name he writes in it will die. But of course, when dealing with a power that great, there's some big consequences coming down the pipeline. Why don't you check out the trailer?
The human whose name is written in this note shall die.
So John, what were your expectations going into this one?
So I am not a manga or anime fan. Dragon Ball Z is the most extreme I'll get with that. Not that I have anything against it, it just happens to be the case. And I've heard a billion times that Death Note is like the one, right? It's not necessarily the best manga ever, but it's the one that gets you into anime and manga. It's the one that takes like American readers specifically, 14-year-olds, 15, like that's the cliche it has. And I think fans of manga and anime wear that with pride. Like they're proud to say that Death Note is often one of the first things that gets people into the genre. So with that expectation, also knowing it had bad reviews, and also knowing it was directed by Adam Wingard, who has historically made really good movies, but kind of fucked up with Blair Witch in my opinion. Knowing all that, I anticipated Death Note would be very, very like fan pleasing in a way where like just a lot of batshit stuff would happen in a way that a 14-year-old kid would love. Like with that high concept, he can kill people gruesomely just by writing their name in a book. I expected this movie to be, if nothing else, at least a really crazy, like batshit, well-paced version of the execution of that idea, as opposed to like a hard-hitting, dark, or serious, like consequence-filled version of that idea. So I expected it to be loony, didn't know if it was going to be good or not.
Death Note is an occasionally loony, always visually engaging, but ultimately shallow and cliche adaptation of source material that presumably lets down the fans and certainly let down a newcomer. Do you agree, John?
I think we're getting a little cliche with saying ultimately shallow or whatever about movies, but it's not wrong here. It's that's kind of the point.
So maybe it's not that it's ultimately shallow, it's kind of shallow from the beginning.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily the main criticism of this movie, though, because I don't think it's ever trying to be anything other than shallow. I don't think this movie doesn't even for a second pretend it's about like moralistic themes and like a stand-in for a metaphor of how we deal with things in society in general and in reality. I think this movie is a full cartoon from the jump. It's designed for that 12 to 15 demographic male. To just be like, holy shit, this is awesome. Now I'm going to eat cereal and I'm going to go do something else. So again, I'm not necessarily saying I like this movie, but I don't necessarily agree with you that saying it's shallow is that harsh of a criticism. Only in that I don't think the filmmakers would disagree with you.
All right, true, fair point.
My issue with this movie is it's pretty sexist, and that's just not a healthy thing to be delivering to. You can argue all you want that like all this brutal violence and this silliness shouldn't be what we should give to our kids, because make no mistake, this is like R or whatever, TVMA, it's made for kids. It's absolutely for kids. I don't give a shit about the violence. It's just like the treatment of women in this, not the coolest thing to deliver to teenagers, in my opinion. That's probably my biggest thing with it that I didn't like.
Yeah, I mean, you have an interesting movie like this, which Adam Wingard is a really good director, so like he's just so much better at so many other directors at like visualizing space. Like the action scenes are really clean, easy to follow,
Yep.
still fit with style. Like all that stuff is never going to be a problem. But the movie just wants so hard to be watchable that like I think, like you said, it's not about its deep themes. But then I'm assuming what it should be about is its fun and engaging plot. But even the plot feels jogged through, like go from point to point. Like I don't feel like there was enough like joy in the filmmaking necessarily to like, or not joy because it's like a dark, funny movie, but there were times when it clicked for me and I was like, yes, the point of this movie, the fun of this movie is just having a good time, like watching this stuff go down. It's quirky. Sometimes you predict something and then you're satisfied when it happens. Sometimes there's a twist. But too often I felt like it rushed through those plot points so that even the main attraction of the movie wasn't quite there for me.
Yeah, there's no doubt that this is based on something else, right? I don't know how long the manga is. I'm guessing it's multiple volumes, and that's why it feels so rushed and compressed in this film. But the way it's written, the rate at which characters are introduced, the rate at which conflict escalates, and the amount of conflict that all comes in this hour and 40 minutes, it's near impossible to have been original, right? Like when you're watching, which is a problem. An adaptation should feel like it's valid and justified in its own right. And I think this is the kind of thing where just by looking at it, you can tell it would be impossible. That's not how a screenwriter could think. That's not how people think. You couldn't write this much shit into one because you'd actually want to develop this stuff. It's a serviceable enough job of compressing things that quickly, like at least it's easy to follow. It's just like, why did you try? Why not just make a mini series or whatever if you really did want to adapt this thing? But yeah, there's a lot of things we can tear apart, and most of the critics already have, right? It's like a 40 on Rotten Tomatoes. But I will say, just like as far as good things, I like the performance. Everyone made fun of like whitewashing aside, right? Because I really can't speak on that because I don't, like I said, I didn't read the manga. From what critics of whitewashing have said, this is just a blatant whitewashing here that there's no justified reason for. I can't argue against that, and that kind of sucks. I don't know why this keeps happening, why we couldn't just watch an actual Japanese actor play a Japanese kid in a movie, but that's neither here nor there. Aside from that, Wolff is watchable. He's very good. I think that he's great at being weaselly and like annoying and kind of like that shitty beta male that he is being, and he stays committed to that throughout the whole time. I was impressed by it. Like Evan said, Adam Wingard is a good director, especially visually. I loved the look of this film. You can talk about ripping off Donnie Darko if you want or whatever, but literally it was pleasing to my eye. I found it to be very enjoyable to watch. Liked a lot of the camera movements here too. So all that stuff, bing bang boom, gotta give it credit.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been a while since I've watched like a movie that I know is like objectively bad and yet been so fine watching it. A lot of that is just like credit where credit's due to people like Nat Wolff and Adam Wingard.
Just like the writing perhaps is objectively bad, but maybe the movie isn't objectively bad. The movie's just objectively misguided. Or a mixed bag. And
and unfortunately, like John, I don't have anything particularly profound to say about the whitewashing. It takes place in America. It also takes place on the West Coast where a lot of Asian people live. I feel like could have been a better solution towards making a movie for American audiences and still being respectful to the source material. So.
If we're going full social justice warrior, like I guess we should just talk for a few minutes before wrapping this review up that like his girlfriend or whatever who like turns out to be a little bit of a trickster, a little bit of a more nefarious temptress, is just like a really shitty, very poorly written character who is the prize of his affection, right? And like that's kind of the point, but we don't develop beyond that in a way that makes her seem like a real human being. It just kind of leaves you with that taste in your mouth of like, these characters hate women. If a person that watches this movie because they're like a friend zone 14-year-old boy that hates girls right now, he would certainly not feel better about women after watching this. He certainly would not gain any respect. In fact, it would reinforce all the negative attitudes and stereotypes you might have as a potentially like emo high school kid or middle school kid who fucking hates women after being rejected by them. That is a fucking, again, a big issue, particularly in a movie like this where I don't imagine the audience, the core that they're going for, is a particularly mature group, and that's not who they're, like, this is fun because watching people die by writing them in a book is crazy, immature fun, and I'm all about that. I was 14, Jesus Christ, a decade ago almost, but I was, and I would have loved the shit out of this, but now as more of an adult, I kind of wish that they had done their duty a little bit and being a little bit more fucking just decent towards any female characters, making them just seem like human beings at all, or like reasonable people or anything like that. Even like the teacher, the principal, what I mean?
And if you're not 14 because you just happen to be older or you read the manga years ago and you're excited to see this movie, hopefully when you see this movie you identify just that the writing is not great for that female character. It's quite possible in the original she's more fleshed out over the course of multiple volumes, or maybe she's not. But within this story, it's just not how we like to see this thing done, and I find it a big letdown.
Or hopefully in the manga there's like another female in the entire fucking thing.
Right.
Like in the whole project there's another female that talks, that isn't just like, an annoying teacher for 2 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Death Note is a letdown in the sense that Adam Wingard is a good director, and he does not let us down with his direction here, but for something that's so hyped as like high quality manga, it's just kind of like Evan said, it's a shallow, sexist, almost lame thing that has some really cool, fun moments in it, and I bet on the page it comes across as a lot more compelling and is probably even better written because it's more fleshed out. This movie really suffers from the an hour and 40-minute price tag, runtime, whatever. If you read the manga and you watched this and you did or didn't like it, I'd actually be quite interested to hear if our criticisms of why we didn't particularly like it are still valid in the manga and we're haters, or this is not for us, or if it's true that the manga actually does resolve a lot of the issues we've brought up in this and the movie just sucks. Because again, I'm quite curious as someone who's never read it. I don't have anything against it in general. I just think, again, this movie could be better, and that's a problem. What's your metaphor?
This movie is kind of like going to the beach, but it rains. It's a letdown.
Sounds like a 1.5 out of 4.
Yeah. You still get a corn dog at the beach or ice cream or whatever.
But it's like a wet corn dog.
Yeah.
But like at least it's not a wet hot dog, because the wet hot dog's gross, gets all soggy. Wet corn dog at least has that outside shell where
Sure, something like that.
pulls it down. Thanks so much for watching. We're the Manhattan Project. When do we review movies?
Every single day.
When will we be? So what does that mean? We're going to be back reviewing another movie when?
Tomorrow?
Oh yeah. And then what about the next day?
And the next day.
And the next day? And the next day?